Okay. So today we will talk about two key things today, and that's what I really want to do today. And anywhere we do it, or anytime we finish, if we finish in this 45 minutes, all of that will actually be it. And if we finish the next 2.5 hours, then that's it. But I really want to finish these particular topics today. Okay, so there is something called stakeholders management. And as a project manager, you will be required to actually have something to do with this. And most of your interviews will definitely be all about stakeholders management, stakeholders management, stakeholders management. That will be a lot of questions, a lot of challenges will definitely come in that area, asking you about, what, when you go for interview, they will ask you, you're a project manager, you've got a difficult team member. How will you manage this particular team member? Or you've got a difficult senior management. How do you intend to manage that senior management and all that? Or how do you identify the senior management? How do you identify your stakeholders and all that? So that is exactly what we want to talk about today. And also we'll talk about risk and issues as well as change management if we are able to get to that. But I really want to cover stakeholders management and risk management today. All right. So we'll say stakeholders, let's talk about stakeholders first. And I think I explained this to us to say, what stakeholder is anyone that is directly involved with the work of a project or that might be both negatively or positively by the work of a project. It's a this is okay. This is one of the give me 1 minute. We're recording, right? If we're recording, I need to remove some things. Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead. So a stakeholder is either an individual, group, organization who is impacted by the outcome of a project, program, or initiative. They have interest in the success of a project and can be within or outside of a project. And also, we could say that stakeholders can have a positive or negative influence on the project. So that is the stakeholder entirely. But what we want to talk about today is how do you now manage these stakeholders? How do you manage them? And the managing them is all about you having it's a critical component to successfully deliver your project. Trust me, if you're not managing your stakeholders properly, then you'll get yourself into trouble. Don't forget that we developed Resi at some point where we identified the work to be done and who is doing that work. Okay. So it is very, very okay or very easy for us to manage people that are directly involved or directly working on the project. But don't you agree with me that the stakeholders are quite larger than that? So how do you manage those stakeholders? And that's what we're talking about here to say, what, stakeholders management is a critical component to successful delivery of any project or any activities. Here, you need to make sure that you gain the support of the stakeholders. And that is why on your project, and I think I've mentioned these ones to say, what, on your project, one of the documents you want to have ready is your stakeholders management plan. How do you intend to manage your stakeholders? What are the plans you have in place to manage your stakeholders? You have to develop a process to say, what, this is the person that is identifying stakeholders. You can say, okay, as a project manager, yes, I'm the project manager on this particular project, but I'm appointing Ian to say, Ian, please, you will be the one to start identifying stakeholders. Yes, identification of stakeholders is everybody's responsibility. Let me quickly say that. Identification of stakeholders is everybody's responsibility to identify who you think a stakeholder is. But when we now come to stakeholders analysis, it is not the responsibility of everyone to do stakeholders analysis. You have to do stakeholders analysis by the project manager or by the senior management or whoever the project manager is appointing to do the stakeholders analysis, because stakeholders analysis is quite sensitive, and you will see the analysis when we get into that, into a typical analysis very soon. It is quite sensitive, so you don't want everybody to be involved with your analysis, or you want to have a selected few while you're doing your stakeholders analysis. Okay, so we have a process. You need to put a process in place, and that's one of the processes you need to put in place is your proper analysis. So, in order for us to manage the stakeholders relationship, you first and foremost we need to identify those stakeholders, and also what are the associated projects or program they are on. Because don't forget that you might be a project manager within a program. So if you're a project manager within a program, you want to identify everyone that is within your project and everyone that is dependent or your project is dependent on. They are also stakeholders as well. So you want to talk about that. Then the next thing you want to talk about when you're doing your stakeholders management plan is the analysis. You now need to analyze the stakeholders' attitudes, the potential need for involvement of in the project as well as the program. Now, you now need to establish a strategy to say this strategy is this particular stakeholder. All we just need to do with this particular stakeholder is just to inform the stakeholder. This particular stakeholder, what we need to do is to manage the stakeholder closely. Or this particular stakeholder, what we need to do is to make sure that we have a briefing with this guy almost every day. So you can see that we have different strategy on how to manage different stakeholders based on the analysis we've done. Okay. Then you now need to execute your plan. Now, whenever you're identifying your stakeholders, there are various areas you need to look out for. Okay. Because that's the first thing you need to do. And that's why we have a document that is called the stakeholders register. We have a document that is called the stakeholders register. You want to first and foremost identify your stakeholders. Like I said, don't forget everyone is expected to identify stakeholders. So whenever you're identifying your stakeholders, just document all the stakeholders you can think about. Make sure all the stakeholders you can think about are documented. Whether you're saying that your daughter at home is a stakeholder on your project, because if your daughter starts throwing tantrums, you might not be able to go to work on time, and that will affect the project. You might not be able to send your report and all of that. Identify all of that, but it's now when we're doing the analysis that we can start now trying to measure, okay, is it sensible for us to include that as a stakeholder on the project? Is it sensible for us to include this person as a stakeholder on the project when we start doing that analysis? So areas to consider when identifying stakeholder is you have to consider, will the person be directly or indirectly affected by the proposed project, initiative, or the program or the work stream? Does this person hold a position, or does this organization hold a position from which they can influence the initiative? Okay. Does this person have an impact on the initiative resources, whether on the budget, whether it's an internal supplier, whether it's a commercial person and all that? Whether it's got impact on the budget. You want to quickly look at all of these. Who is approving the budget? Who is raising the POs and all that? You want to look at all of these and understand, okay, what are those areas that you need to consider whenever you're looking at identifying your stakeholders? Does the person potentially benefit from the initiative, or are they in position to resist the change? So don't forget that we once spoke about it, that whenever you do a change transformation project or an IT transformation project, there will always be resistance because people don't like change. So you really want to document all of these people or people that might be involved in that whenever you're identifying your stakeholders. After you've identified your stakeholders, the next place you want to go to is now to do what we call the stakeholders analysis. Okay. Your analysis is now you having a kind of stakeholders matrix, or what some other people will call the grid. Stakeholders matrix or stakeholders grid. On here, you can see normally we use a 2x2 matrix. We always use a 2x2 matrix when we're doing stakeholders analysis. We have keep satisfied, we have manage closely, monitor, and keep informed. So whenever you're doing your stakeholders analysis, you want to start putting people in different boxes. Okay. And I will share one of the tools one of the tools I've used in the past, one of the tools I've used in the past to do my stakeholders analysis for one of the organizations I've worked for. I'll share that now, and we'll all do that together. We identify some stakeholders. When we identify those stakeholders, we'll identify, okay, what exactly will be their involvement on our Office 365 deployment for us to do that analysis. So while we've done the identification, let's do our identification. We've spoken about identification, so let's do identification here. Stakeholder's name, let's say the first stakeholder I want to think about is Ian Hen. What Ian's Hen position is a project manager. Okay. Don't forget that my big is all the things you're seeing here, your own stakeholders register might not have all of these. This is quite specific to the project I worked on. Okay. So yours might just be stakeholders name, position, it would be major requirement expectation, what's the current assessment of this person, and all that. So that's Ian. Next person is Tokumbo. Tokumbo A. Who else do we have on the call? We have Adedeji S. We have Zakiat Bello. We have Fumi M. We have Ola A. Then we have Angela E. Then we have IJ. Okay. IJ what? We have Femi M. Who else do we have on the call? That's it, really. Okay, that's it. All right. Okay, so let's say this is our risk manager. This is our QA. That's our BA. That our BA as well. That's our procurement manager. That's our comms manager. That's our change lead. Then we have our training manager. Oh, let's say deployment manager. Deployment manager. Then we have our change lead. Okay. I will ignore the region. I will ignore the region for the purpose of this class. Okay. Now, so at the moment, we now need to understand, okay, this particular stakeholder, the project manager, of course, definitely is leading. So what's the desired engagement? Yeah, we still want them to lead. No, so this is where I've got the stuff. You will agree with me that I've got 1 to 5 as power and interest. So when we talk about stakeholders involvement, we always talk about the power and the interest of that particular stakeholder. What's the power of this stakeholder? What's the interest of this particular stakeholder on the project? Okay, so we can say that Ian's power on the project is 4 because he's a project manager. You can make the project not work. His interest is 4. The risk manager, for the purpose of this exercise, let's say project manager is just supportive. What do we want? We want him to be supportive as well. Screen. What's the stuff? Let's say 2 is a risk manager. The interest is 3. What is a QA? The QA is neutral. Where do we want to get him to? We really want him to be supportive at the moment. What is power? His power is 3. What's his interest? His interest is 3 as well. Okay. All right. Who is the BA? The BA is at the moment, the BA doesn't want to elicit a requirement for us. Let's say we've got a resistance from him. Where do we want to get him to? We want him to be leading. or we want Zakia to be leading, we want that to be leading. What's the power? The power is, let's say, it's 2, the interest is 3. Okay. Let's say Fumi is Fumi at the moment, she's a change lead, she's unaware. Where do we want to get her to? We just want her to be neutral or supportive. Let's say neutral. Then what's that? 3. 3. The procurement manager at the moment is supportive, desired engagement. We just want him to be, let's say, neutral as well, to just for the purpose of this exercise reading. Okay. His interest is low. Comms manager at the moment is neutral. We need to get a comms manager to be leading. What's the power? The power is 2. The interest is 2. Okay, let's duplicate all of that. Don't want to be going. Let's duplicate for that further. Okay, so you can see everything we've done so far. We've talked about, okay, what exactly is a current engagement that we are assessing these people on? What exactly is our desired place we want them to be? But the one that is very critical is this: what's the power and the interest? Okay. When we get to power and the interest, what we can do here is to say, you know what, let's run our analysis on that clear running an analysis, update that. Okay. So you can see that my stuff is updated, my grid is updated. So if you have to do your reporting, on a weekly basis to your senior stakeholder to say, you know, we've done our stakeholders analysis, this is it, or instead of me looking at this particular register, I can always look at this grid. And whenever I look at this grid, I can see that, you know what, I need to manage Deji and Fumi very, very closely. Because at the moment, Deji is neutral, but I need to get him to be supportive. Fumi is unaware. I need to get her to be supportive. So you can see, so I can say that, you know what, and Ian as well is leading. I can say these 3 stakeholders, I need to manage them closely. Then when you talk about managing them closely, this is not how you will now tailor your communications, your communication plan to say, you know what, because I need to manage these guys closely, that means there should be a weekly report being sent to them. Tokumbo and Zekiyat are just to keep informed. Keeping informed might just be, you know what, once a month is what is your strategy. Your stakeholders management strategy is, you know, once a month information. The guys you're monitoring, Angela, IG, and Femi, yes, you're monitoring them. Just monitor them. They don't really need to know a lot. Just monitor them in case their interests or in case their power change. So you want to do all of that. Then Ola A, you have to keep Ola A satisfied because Ola A is supportive. You want to move Ola A to neutral. You have to keep Ola A satisfied at this point. So you can see that this is what we call the stakeholders analysis. And whenever you're doing your stakeholders analysis, you have to make sure that your stakeholder register is well populated. And you can always have a stakeholders workshop, a stakeholder analysis or stakeholders management workshop where you get your key people in the room to say, you know what, let's identify all the stakeholders we have on this particular project. Who is who on this particular project? What is the power of this person? What is the interest of this person? Do we need this person? Do we need to keep this person informed? Do we need to keep this person, manage this person closely? Do we need to monitor this person or keep this person satisfied? So these are things you want to start doing on your project. And this will help you to know how to relate with each person as a project manager, or talk to your team to say, you know what, this is how we want to relate to this person. This is how we need to keep this person informed. These are the information that this person is requiring because this person is sponsor. So we need to manage this person closely and all that. Any question on this? Ask questions, please. Go ahead, IJ.
So the table you on Excel, how do you create that?
You create that using macros and all that. That one was actually customized. I customized that for the organization
Okay.
at some point because we were running into trouble. So I had to work on that particular grid using macros and all that to develop something very useful for the organization. Like I said, yours might just be, yours might just be what exactly is what's the name of this stakeholder, what's the power, what's the interest, and that's it. You might not even come up with a grid. It might just be a register you're using. And there are loads of template online that you can use.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Any question from anyone? Any other question, please, when it comes to stakeholders management?
Yes, I
Go ahead, please, Ian.
I'm just looking at a scenario in your position. When I look at your CV, the way you've moved from one project to another successfully, at what point do you decide to start working on this stakeholder management when you just go in any project? Do you first settle down or do you start?
The moment you start, don't forget that on the mandate that was given to you, some stakeholders were identified on that particular mandate. Okay.
Yes.
The mandate given to you by the sponsor or by the senior or by the organization, there are some key stakeholders that are there to say, you know what, you're the project manager. That's the first key stakeholder. These are your sponsors, or these are your sponsors. These are the person we think will be the risk manager. Some mandates can have that. Okay. When they have that, then you now need to quickly start doing analysis on them. You need to start documenting them on the stakeholders register. And also, let me quickly say this: stakeholders register comes from the start of a project, and it's always a living document throughout the project. Okay, because people will be in and out of a project. So when they are in and out of a project, you have to make sure that your stakeholders register is always updated. And that's why I say, you know what, as a project manager, you must be able to identify one person to say, this guy, Ian, you will be the one to be updating the stakeholders register on this particular project. So when people come in and go, make sure you offboard them and also onboard these people, okay, on the stakeholders register, and let's do the analysis as we go along. Does that make any sense? So from the start of a project, stakeholders identification is necessary or required.
Thank you.
Welcome. Any other question from anybody?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you.
Go ahead, Femi.
Yeah. So what are the potential conflicts or risk arising from stakeholders' interests? I mean, stakeholders, yes. That's my question.
It's all
what
dependent.
Are the potential conflicts?
It's all dependent on the kind of project you're working on, and this is one of the reasons why you have to identify these stakeholders. Like, you can see what I'm showing on my screen now. You can see the name, the CEO, what region is unaware. You want to move the person to supportive. So what are the major requirements? Unaware of the program requirement, funding and prioritization commitment. So you can see that for this particular guy, the kind of conflict that can come is when the budget is not properly managed for your project. Okay? So you can say, you know what, in order to manage this guy very well, you now need to have a face-to-face meeting to share project objectives, timelines, outcome, because don't forget, you need this person's buy-in to be able to release the money that is needed. So if that is what you need, then you need to have this person face-to-face. As you need to make sure that you're talking to this person, you're giving this person assurance in order to make sure that there are no conflicts arising. So it's all dependent on the need of each of those stakeholders that will, on your project, different projects, different stakeholders, different needs. Okay. But that's why I say, you know what, your stakeholders analysis must be superb. And as a project manager, you won't be the only one to do it. You have to bring in subject matter expert on your project to sit down together to do this analysis and make sure that you are very, very comfortable in what each of the stakeholders require, and you're you're getting things across to them, and they're being supportive of your project. Okay, does that make any sense?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dad.
Okay. Any other question from anyone? IJ, your
Sorry,
hand
let
is
me
up.
answer. Yeah, one more question.
Okay.
So the stakeholder identification, is it done by just the project manager or all the team members?
Like I said, you know what? Whenever you're identifying your stakeholders, let everybody identify stakeholders. Get everybody into a room to identify stakeholders, okay? But whenever you're not doing the analysis, because don't forget that the analysis is quite sensitive to say, okay, what exactly you might, if you're saying everybody, I might be in the room and you're saying that my power is 2, when I know that you know what my power should be 4, then I would say, you know what, oh, you're making my power to be 2, you're making my interest to be 2, I will show you. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so you have to make, and also this particular stakeholders register, you have to make sure that it is not available to everybody to view.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
All right.
I always advise that make sure it is not available to everybody on the project to view. Okay. Make
Yeah.
sure that as a project manager, you're super protective of these, because don't forget that there are some things, things that will be written on this. Okay, what's the major requirement of this person? What exactly is the interest of this person? What exactly is the problem of this particular stakeholder? So you get all of these will be documented in the stuff. What exactly is the resistance that is coming from this particular stakeholder? You're documenting all of that. And if you document that, and on that stakeholder that you think I'm quite resistant to your project, and I've seen what you've documented, I might be more resistant to you than what you can even think about. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's another way of saying stakeholders management as well. You have to manage stakeholders very well, and one of the ways to manage stakeholders very well is to make sure that your stakeholders register is not actually visible to everybody, but to
Okay.
some senior guys and yourself working on the project.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. Any other question from anybody on this?
Yeah, did you, Mr. Ayo, I was gonna ask
Right.
that question in relation to do not make it available to everyone. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned
Matter experts.
subject matter expert now.
Yeah.
So who are those people that form the subject matter expert?
They're just key leadership of people that are knowledgeable on your project. A typical example is, you know what, I might be, I give you a typical example. I worked on a project, and that lady saved my head a lot of times, because though she was just a project support, she was a project support on the project, and yet because she's been within the organization for long, okay, so she's moved from one place to another. So I counted her as a project as a subject matter expert on the conversation I was about to have when it comes to stakeholders management. So I had to bring her into a room to say, okay, who is Mark? Okay, who is David? Who is this guy? Do you get? Who is Rob? Who is Pete? And all that. So on that particular occasion, that lady who is just a project support, okay, is a subject matter expert. Okay, SMEs. These are people we call SMEs. They're just subject matter expert. And also on your project, because we're doing Office 365 deployment, you can say that, you know, a solution architect is a subject matter expert on this particular project, because they are key to you. They are key to you, the work you're doing. The BA is a subject matter expert, because this BA will go round, has gone round to collect requirements or to elicit requirements. So he's had one-to-one, or she's had one-to-one conversation with all of these people. So at some extent, she can give you some steer in whatever you're doing. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Welcome. Your hand is still raised. Any other question? Any question from anyone on this? Okay. So just me explaining each of those fields and what you need to know. A grid shown. I've explained this already. I've generated this for you. I've explained that for yourself. So any question on how to develop your stakeholders register, any question on how to identify your stakeholders, how to do your analysis based on their power and their interest, and all that. Yeah, Tokumbo, go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, for an instance, maybe on a project, we have a stakeholder that is very difficult to deal with. Maybe the person feels like, I'm sure you might have experienced something like that. When you implement this part of this project, my job will go, or maybe what's it called? You're trying to like say this thing will take away some benefits and all of that, and the person insists that maybe it won't allow you to go to the next level, but you have actually done some part of the project. But this point is critical, but it's saying it won't allow you to move to the next level. How do we manage that kind of stakeholder?
So the question is, were you able to identify the power and the interest of this stakeholder at the beginning of your project? Okay,
Not at all.
exactly. So this is why we're doing this to say, you know what, in order for you not to run into this trouble, make sure that such interest or such power of this person is identified and this person is carried along. Because the first thing you want to understand is what exactly is the reason of this particular stakeholder saying this project will not go along. What exactly is the reason for this person saying it? Is it because this stakeholder was not carried along at the beginning of the project when the project was getting formulated? Or this stakeholder believes that, you know what, no, I've got my own vendor I want to bring on board, and because I've got my own vendor I want to bring on board, so definitely I will frustrate the whole project until my vendor is brought on board, or I prefer this. So you need to identify what exactly is the need or what exactly is the issue with this particular stakeholder. And the best you can do is to address that need with this particular stakeholder. You have to have you need to have that conversation. You need to speak to this person. You need to speak to this guy. You need to have that conversation and making sure that, okay, where do we go from here? Okay. And if this particular guy is not a sponsor, if it's just one of those stakeholders, then you need to escalate this to the sponsor of the project itself to say, this is what you're facing with this particular stakeholder. Can we have a conversation on this with this person? Or what do you think? The sponsor might tell you, you know, ignore the person. Ignore it, the person, go ahead with your project. If the sponsor says ignore the person, go ahead with your project. Trust me, it's not always that easy to ignore, because this person might not give you the resources needed. This person might frustrate the work. But as a project manager, your job is to make sure that every conflict are getting resolved. Your job is to make sure that the interest of everyone is covered. Your job is to make sure that you're getting the buy-in of your stakeholders, except in some limited occasions where you have some terrible stakeholders. Okay, that you now need to go back to the sponsor. You know, sponsor, you need to speak to this guy. You need to call this guy into a room, because a sponsor that is in charge of the budget or in charge of the money will want the success of a project. So definitely the one that doesn't want the success of a project can't be the sponsor, I will believe. Does that make any sense to yourself, Tokumo?
Yes, thank you. Escalate to the sponsors, engage, ensure.
And first of all, identify what exactly is the issue with this particular person. What you have to do that, you have to identify that, you have to analyze that before you can go meet the sponsor to say, you know what, the interest of this person, I understand the interest of this person. This is what this person is saying: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But unfortunately, we can't do 1, 2, 3, but we can accommodate 4, 5. Okay, you just don't want to go escalate to the sponsor without you having a proper understanding of what the issue is with the spot with that particular stakeholder. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. All right, for me.
I think it's the with regards to the slide just before this
Okay.
one. Okay, so what's my question again? I've now forgotten because okay, so my question was to do with the stakeholder the power interest grid. So
Yes.
when you were identifying your stakeholders and doing the interest and power, I noticed that it's automatically updated on the when it came to this screen, and I was like trying to understand how it automatically updated.
Which one? This one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because when you were doing it so it seems
on the
like
grid. Yeah, that
there was
was
some
that was
kind
a
of
question.
formatting that was.
Yes, that was a question IJ asked because I've
Oh,
got macros. I've got
oh,
macros in each of these boxes. Okay. So by the time I press update, that's a macro working at the background. So based on what is in my register, it picks the data in my register hub to develop my grid for me. Okay. I designed this to work for the project I worked on. Okay.
okay, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
No problems. All right. Any other question from anybody?
Yeah, sorry, if I may ask, how can we design that? That's basically what is confusing, yeah.
Like I said, there are numerous templates. There are numerous templates on inbuilt template on Google. It's just for you to just Google stakeholders register with macros, and you can always get few. It might not be as beautiful as the one I showed now. Okay, but definitely you will get something that will link the register with the grid as well for you to run an analysis on. Okay.
Sorry, did you say macro?
Yeah, macro. Yes.
MACRO, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
That's all right. All right, let's get to talk about Fumi, your hand is still raised. Is that a question? Okay. All right, let's talk about the next critical thing on project, which is, you need to manage your stakeholders well. And also the next critical thing is you need to make sure that your risk is well managed as well. And for this, I'm not sure if I've got risk register. No, don't have the one designed with macros on this laptop. Interesting. Okay, let's talk about risk a bit. Give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. That's the Princeton one. No, this is not the one I'm looking for. We can use that for the purpose of tonight. Okay, yeah, we'll use it for the purpose of tonight. Okay, all right. So let's talk about risk a bit. So risk is anything that is uncertain on the project that can actually affect a project both positively or negatively. But in most cases, we talk about the negative one, which is a threat that we talk about in most cases. Really. So the other positive one is what we call opportunity. Okay, is what we call opportunity at the point. But in most projects, we talk more about the threat. We talk more about the negative risk. Now, when we talk about, just like we did with stakeholders, you identify your stakeholders, you do your stakeholders analysis. Same goes for risk. You identify your risk and you do your risk analysis as well. Then you now do response to those risks. As a project manager, this is very, very critical for you as a project manager to manage on the project. Because from the start of a project, you will be identifying risk, and even on your mandate, in the mandate given to you, some major risk might have been identified. Major risk might have been identified to say, you know what, there is on this particular project on your Office 365 migration, we noticed that, you know what, April, May, or the first 2 weeks in April, as well as the first 2 weeks in May, are always what we call the freeze, the environment freeze or the business freeze. That is a very, very huge risk you need to document on your project to say, you know what, there is a freeze. If there is a freeze, if there is a first 2 weeks in April and first 2 weeks in May as freeze, so that means on your project, you're losing 4 weeks on that particular project. On the timeline I've given to you already, that 6-month timeline, that means you will be unable to do anything for 4 weeks, or you will be unable to migrate data for 4 weeks because there is a freeze. So you will now need to plan other activities. So we've identified that risk. We now need to start planning other activities around it that will not require us migrating data because there is a freeze around that period. Okay, so these are things we call risk. You have to identify. After you identify the risk, you have to do what we call the risk analysis. For the risk analysis, there are two. The risk analysis are two. There are two as well. I mean, there are two. We've got the quality. Sorry, I got distracted here. Well, message just came in from someone. So we've got what we call the qualitative risk analysis and what we call the quantitative risk analysis. Okay. So for the qualitative risk analysis, we want to talk about, okay, what exactly is the probability of occurrence? What's the probability of occurrence of a risk? What is the impact if it should happen? Okay, let's rate it from 1 to 5. What's the probability of this particular risk you've identified? And just like I told you about stakeholders identification, the same thing I will repeat with risk. On your project, guys, on your project, don't discard any risk. If someone should say, oh, there's a risk of getting knocked down, there's a risk of the BA getting knocked down by boss and not coming to work and all that, don't say, oh, what kind of risk is that? You know what? If someone can think it, document it. It is not when you're not doing your analysis that you can now separate jargon from what is actually the reality. But you have to make sure that everything is documented. And while you're doing that, you now need to put a process in place. Okay, what are we using? And also on your project, in most organizations, as a project manager, if you're going into an organization as a project manager, in most cases, most organizations have got processes in place already. They've got their risk management process in place. When I say they've got their risk management process in place, that means they've got their risk register in place. They know exactly what they are using. Some organizations will tell you we're using 3x3 matrix here. When I say 3x3 matrix, that means they're saying low risk, medium risk, and high risk. That's what they are using. Meanwhile, some organizations will tell you there is very low risk, there is low risk, there is medium risk, there is high risk, and there is very high risk. That's how they want to categorize their own risk within the organization. Some can tell you that, you know what, no, we don't even want to use that. What we want to use in our own organization is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we just want to use numbers, meaning, but while they are using numbers, you know that 1 means very low, 2 means low, 3 means medium, 4 means high, 5 means very high. That's you that you're thinking about. So they will have all of these processes in place. They will have all of this strategy in place already. So all you need to ask is go and ask the Center of Excellence or ask the PMO to say, you know what, do we have anything in place? Or ask other project managers or people that are within the organization already, do we have anything when it comes to risk management strategy within this organization? Do we have a risk register? It is where these are all of the things I've been talking to you about. You need to make sure you ask those questions first in-house. It is when they don't have it that you can now bring your own from outside. But you need to make, as a project manager that is coming on board, you need to have those conversations with whoever is onboarding you to say, okay, where's our risk management strategy? What's our issue management strategy? Where's our stakeholders management strategy? Do we have a stakeholders register in-house already that I can pick up to use and all of that? In most cases, there will always be. There will always be, if you're in the UK especially, in most organizations, you will always have all of those things. It is when they tell you, well, we don't have, then you can now start creating, excuse me, you can now start creating yours. Okay. So let's talk about, let's go into whenever you're the risk management strategy itself, you have to prepare your management strategy. You have to determine what are the risk categories Some organizations will determine risk categories. They will tell you there's finance risk, there's project management risk, there is a technical risk and all that. Like I said, you need to understand what exactly do they have in-house within your organization. If they don't have anything, don't go into identifying risk categories. Most of the projects I've worked on recently, I don't use categories. We don't use categories. Okay, we just go straight into, let's start listing those risks. What are those risks within the organization? How do we do that? What do we need to do? And all that. How do we classify? How do we document? Do we use Excel spreadsheets? Like the one I'll be showing you now is Excel spreadsheets. Do we use SharePoint? I just the organization I'm working on, I'm working for at the moment. Their risk was on the spreadsheet. I moved all of their risk to SharePoint because I don't like the way it's being managed. So I had to move all of those risks to SharePoint for them to say, okay, let's move everything to SharePoint. Let's manage everything in SharePoint, because for SharePoint, managing risk on SharePoint brings in transparency, brings in a multiple updating, meaning Tokunwa can be updating while Ian is updating it as well. And you can actually see the version history of who has documented or who has updated this particular what has been done, what was done, and all that. But for spreadsheet, you might not be able to capture that, because that means I need to check it out. If I store it on SharePoint, I need to check it out. By the time I check it out, no other person can work on it. I will need to ping it to say, oh, Ian, please, can you check that? Can you check that filing, because I need to make review on it and all that. So with these, so you need to understand, okay, what exactly is the tool we want to use in-house as well. So you need to understand that within your organization, what are the tools that they are using? Is it Excel spreadsheet? If they're using Excel spreadsheet, come on, just go ahead and use it with them. It is not when you think it is becoming cumbersome and you understand SharePoint very well that you should be able to advise them to say, why don't let us move to SharePoint? Or if you know how to use Jira very well, you can actually say, why don't let us move our risk to Jira as well, to manage in Jira. So that is this what you can see up here. It's a very simple risk register that I downloaded online from Prince2, and I think I sent that to every one of you as well. Okay, every one of you. So you can see risk ID is very, very critical to have. You need to have your risk ID in most cases, because you have issues, you have dependencies, you have your stakeholder stuff. I always advise people to use R001 to say, what risk, so that you can identify, because sometimes you need to move risk to issue. So if you move risk to issue, or you need to attach an action to this particular risk, then we can understand what is happening. We can say, okay, who is the author? The author of this particular risk is Ian. What date was it registered? We can say it was registered on 23/03/24. We can say what exactly is a risk. What exactly is a risk category? We can say it's a technical risk. Okay. What exactly is the cause of this particular risk? So for our Office 365 deployment, who can tell me some of the risks that you think we can encounter? Anybody?
I think for the laptops now, maybe, or for the computer, let me put it that way. The fact that their capacity, or how should I put it now, might not be compatible for the 365 deployment.
Okay. Okay. So what you're saying that the capacity might not, the laptop spec might not be compatible with what we're trying to
Deploy for, yeah.
deploy that. Okay, we can say what exactly is the event? The event is incompatibility of laptop with Office 365. okay, of laptops with Office 365. Okay, what do you think will be the effect if this should happen? For me, I'll come to you.
I think it will forestall the project.
Okay.
Like it's gonna, hinder the progress of the project.
Delay on the project delivery. Okay. So in around, I don't like this. I don't like this. I'm looking for, it doesn't have it. No, I can't use this. I don't like this. I don't like this register. It's too, let me see if I can search for another register. I like the one with risk management. Okay. Let's see. Let's see this. Let's see this one. It's not the same. I don't like that. This is better. Aha, this is, I like this one. This is better. Go to entry. For me, while I'm doing this, what's your question?
No, I was just thinking in terms of what risk there could be. So
Okay.
I was thinking in terms of like the organization not even having the actual hardware, so awaiting maybe delivery of the hardware, maybe
Okay.
laptops and
That's fine.
desktops.
Okay, good stuff.
So delayed delivery.
Let's start with compatibility of laptop with Office 365. 365 category technical. We said it's technical, right? Or what category do they have here? Yes, they've got technical. Let's do that. Status. No, don't want to do status. Let's do what's the probability that this will happen? Knowing fully well. So this is where we're not doing. Okay, so let's stop. Let's stop there. Let's document all the risk first. What was the risk you said for me?
I said delay in delivery of the hardware or the software
Okay.
itself.
Hardware
Or software.
delivery delay or delay in hardware delivery. Okay. What other thing we can say? Data loss or corruption during migration. Okay. Who else? Who else want to give us more risk? We can say network connectivity issues.
Server down.
Yeah, we can say, yeah, which is network connectivity issues. We can say user resistance to change, right? Tokumbo, go ahead.
Unavailability of resource. Maybe
Yep.
the resources that would work on the.
Yeah, very true. Unavailability of resource. Okay. We can say security breach as well.
Damaged products.
Yeah, security breaches and data vulnerability. Okay. What else? Let's do 10.
Unexpected technical issues.
Yeah, we spoke about that. Technical issue in what sense?
During the implementation process, there can also be breakdown of
Okay. Let's say deployment delay. We've said hardware delay. Okay, compatibility. Oh, sugar, I missed that. So we can say deployment delays due to technical issues, right?
What about operational risk?
How do you want to put that? What do you want to put that?
Yeah, in supply chain disruption, maybe delays or disruptions
Yeah,
in
we've
receiving
got that.
critical
We've got that. We've
materials.
got it already. That's our second risk: hardware delivery delay.
Okay.
Lack of user training. Lack of user training and
But
adoption.
what about the business requesting for something outside? Maybe we have
Yeah, yeah,
150, or they're saying they want something more than
yeah,
the features in Office 360, the ones we actually
yeah.
proposed.
Business requesting for of scope out of scope features. Okay, make sense? Let's stop there. Let's stop there. Femi, your hand is still raised. Okay. All right, let's stop there. Okay, hardware delay, delivery delay. Let's see what they have here for us. Design, inclement weather. Let's see if we can add logistics to that. Operational. Okay, yeah. Data loss and corruption during migration. That's technical, isn't it? As technical, network connectivity, technical, user resistance to change, operational, or should we categorize that as resource?
Resource.
Deployment delay due to technical issue with categorized as technical, unavailability of resource. Okay, security breaches, technical issue, business requirement, those are operational. Okay, all right. So let's comment. This one has got 1 to 7. So this is using 1 to 7.
Sorry, you haven't categorized the last one.
Oh, sorry. Lack of user training and adoption. Let's categorize that as operational as well. Okay, that's it. All right. So probability. So while we're doing this, guys, you can see that I'm doing this with every one of us. So whenever you're identifying your risk, and that's why I always advise people, except for the program I'm on at the moment, that the program manager doesn't want to open up the risk register and all that. I always tell people, you know what, open up the risk register, let everybody document the risk in the risk register. So you can see that what we did is to document the risk in the risk register. So when it now comes to risk analysis, so what we've done so far is what is called risk identification. Okay, that's what we've done. Now, from risk identification, we now want to move into risk analysis. That's what we're going to. We've identified the risk. So let everybody identify the risk. As a project manager, make sure you conduct risk workshop. As a project manager, get everybody into one room to say, you know what, we're doing a risk identification workshop, or we're doing a risk workshop. Let's identify, get the post notes to them, get the post sheet to them to say, you know, everybody get this post sheet, start writing any risk you can think about, paste it on the wall. Then is that after they've pasted it on the wall, that's what we've done now. We've now done the identification. So if you want to categorize your own risk, you know what you want to categorize your risk as, get a paper or write something on the wall as well to say, these are technical risk, these are operational risk, these are resource risk, these are cost risk, and all of that. So when you do that, you can now tell everybody to say, you know what, look at all of those post sheets that you have. Can you put all of these post sheets under the category that you think they belong into? So they put it there. Then you, with the whole team, you now walk through one category to another. By the time you walk from one category to another, you identify that some of the risks that are under a particular category might not even be true, and everybody will agree to say, oh, do you think that this is an operational risk? Everybody will say, no, I don't think it's an operational risk. It should be technical. So you can see, so we're moving into technical and all that. So all of these are now identified. So we've identified our risk. So the next place we now need to go to is to do what we call the risk the risk analysis. So let's do our risk analysis to say, you know what, for risk analysis, for this particular compatibility of laptop for Office 365, what exactly is the probability? What's the probability that this particular risk will occur, knowing fully well that we are deploying this for Blue Sky Citadel? Don't forget, Blue Sky Citadel, computer savvy, they've got the money and all of that. What's the probability from 1 to 7? 1 is low, 7 is the highest. From 1 to 7, what do you think? Do you think that there is a probability of us having laptops within that 140 that will not be compatible with the stuff, with Office 365? What number would you pick?
I think that number will be dependent on the company. Just like you said, now it's a very rich company and the company is doing well. So if the company is doing well, and of course I've been on maybe several other projects and I've been using their laptops or computers for, for office use, and they've done a couple of other things there. There is every possibility, the possibility of this risk might be low. But if it's a company that's been struggling, or a company that's just starting up, or a company that has been on what's it called now, an old version of laptops or computer, the risk could be high. So it depends on the company anyway, but I would go for 3.
3, okay, all right. I want one more person to challenge that. Who else has got a different opinion? Okay, we'll go with 3 then. All right, so we'll say the probability of that occurring is a 3. What is the impact if it should occur?
Yeah, it's gonna delay the project, definitely.
Okay, so from 1 to 7, what impact will you go for?
That's gonna be 5 or 6, yeah.
Okay, let's go for a 5. So we've got 15 as a rating. It's a amber, it's not red. So we can say, okay, who is the owner? So we're not moving in. So we can actually say here to say, you know what? If this should occur, what exactly is the monetary impact? Estimated monetary impact if that should occur. So this is now where you need someone that might have done the stuff before, someone that is very, very knowledgeable in this to say, you know what, if that should occur, that means we need to go back and buy laptops, which will be an additional money on the project, or that means we will get delayed by 2 days. The consultant we've brought in to come and deploy those things, we might not be able to work for 2 days, and because we brought them in, we need to pay, and that means another extra 2 days. So we can say, you know what, there's a £5,000 monetary impact on this particular risk we have. Then we can now say, who is going to be the owner of this particular risk? We can say, you know what, N is the owner of that risk. And what exactly is the response to this particular risk? We can say, you know what, best thing to do is to mitigate. How do we mitigate? Let us make sure that we bake in a system analysis into our project. Okay, we're baking system analysis into our project initially to actually run a first test. Let's run a first test into that to say, you know what, let's run a test initially, not until when we now need to start deploying. Is now when we will now discover that the laptop is not compatible. You see? So we now say, you know what, let's do an initial run analysis. Say run an initial analysis on the laptops from the start of the project and bake in required time for these analyses. Okay, so you can see that we can say what exactly is a trigger. What are we going to see as a trigger that will tell us that, you know what, by the time you see a trigger could be, you know what, okay, year of the laptop. The moment you see the year of the laptop, you want to be sure that, this laptop can be compatible. Okay. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to anybody? What we've done with this particular risk now?
Yeah, it
Yes.
does.
Yeah, it does make a lot of
Okay,
sense.
good. So this is what is called risk identification, as well as risk analysis and risk response planning. As a project manager, this is your baby. This is your job to identify the risk. Identify the risk. If you use category within your organization, categorize the risk. These status, I won't bore you with these status really. With this, I won't bore you because it's more of a risk response for me. Status could now be, you know what, mitigate. Our response is mitigate. At the end of the day, what did we do? We can say, you know what, at the end of the day, we transferred that risk. Even though we said our response was mitigate, by the end of the day, we brought in a consultant. We brought in a consultant to run the whole analysis for us. We didn't bother running the whole analysis within our own team. We brought in Capgemini, or we brought in PwC to come and do the analysis on that 140 and give us a report. Okay, which is outside of our timeline or anything. So we've transferred that particular risk. But our risk response that we said we will do is to mitigate. Okay, by the end of the day, the status was we had to transfer that particular. So this is what you need to do for each of those analyses for that. So anywhere you see green, then whenever you see green on your own analysis, let's assume this particular risk was saying that, you know what, it's a 2. I mean, it's a 1, and the impact if it should occur also is a 1. So you can see that it's green. Because it's green, we can say, you know what, this particular risk, we can accept it because it's not really biggie. Because it's a low risk, we can accept and just go along with it. So you can see that this is expected of you to do. And if you're a PMO person, if you're a project management office analyst or office or project support, if that's what you're picking up, another project manager, you will be expected to be doing this alongside your project manager. You will need to sit down with the project manager to make sure that all of these are documented, all of these are analyzed. You don't want to leave, but because project manager are fond of just identifying risk without going through all of these analyses. So as a PMO person, your job is to sit down with these project managers and make sure that all of these are well documented, and whoever comes into this particular risk register can see what the risk is, can see what exactly is the probability that we've said it will occur, or the impact if it will occur, what exactly, who is the owner of this risk. That is very critical. Who is the owner of this risk? So if I can say this, I can call Ian to say, Ian, I just looked at the risk register now, and I saw that compatibility of laptop for Office 365 is a risk. What are we doing about it? Where are you with it? Is that rectified now? Have we responded to that? Have we closed that risk now? Is it closed now and all that? So you can see this is what you are expected to do as a project manager on your project. You can get your team together, identify the project, identify the risk. Like I said, you've got your post notes on the wall, you've categorized that. The next thing now to document it and start telling people this particular risk that we've identified here as a technical risk, compatibility of the laptop, guys, what exactly is the probability of occurrence and what's the impact if it should occur. On that particular table, you'll be hearing a few debates. That should be 4, that should be medium, that should be low, that should be very low. Because of our organization, we've done something similar before in the past. We've run the analysis on the laptop. We have the report, so that is not really a major risk on this particular project. Everybody's bringing their stuff. You can say, okay, all right, we'll keep it open. Let's give it a 2. Let's give it a 2. At the end of the day, we have consensus. Say, okay, let's give it a 2. Let's give it a 2. We leave it open. Should, in case we have stuff, then we can always go back to that and say, yes, a risk has been identified. So this is what is expected for you to do. But in case you don't have that luxury of time to do a risk workshop, then you have to encourage your team to always go into the risk register, document the risk, make sure you, as a project manager, make sure at least once a week, look at the risk register, do a review. Even if you're a PMO person as well, look at the risk register, do a review on the risk, and make sure that you know what your status meeting, high risk, the risks that are high or very high are brought to the status meeting, is being discussed at the meeting, and everybody is aware of what kind of risk you have in your risk register that are high or very high, and everybody can be aware of what could possibly happen on your project. Because don't forget, if a risk should occur, your project will be in trouble. If a high risk should occur, your project will be in trouble. It might delay your project. It might cause your project to shut down. It might actually distort the scope of a project, and it might increase the cost of a project as well. And it might actually bring more people on the project. So risk is very, very critical for you to mind, because it can affect the resources, can affect the budget, can affect the time, can affect the scope of work, and also can affect the benefits that you need to realize from your project. Any question tonight? Any question on risk management?
Yes, Ayo. So
Go ahead, Ayo.
basically, what you are saying that the risk management is being done in the beginning of the project.
It is done throughout the project.
Okay, throughout the project.
Yes, but I always advise that, you know what, let's have an initial one at the beginning of the project. It's called a risk workshop. That's what I always do on my projects.
Because I was reading, and I was trying to understand the difference between risk management and issue management.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that for the next 10 minutes. We'll talk about issue management.
Okay.
Okay. Any other question on risk? For me, go ahead.
Okay, so okay, the risk workshop, initially you said that you would use it with the team to identify the risks.
Yes.
Then I think you then earlier on you said when it then comes to the analysis,
Yes.
that you just do it with a selected few, or you take it away from the team. So but then when you were, I'm presuming that this filling in this risk register is part of the analysis.
Yes, it is part of the analysis. And
So
the
how
reason
do
why I
you,
said,
so
the reason,
when,
go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
so you're getting the whole team to like help in the probability and the impact,
Yeah.
but then they're not supposed to be part of
Yes.
the,
So the reason why I said, you know what, you can use the whole team if you trust your team. Okay. If you trust your team to be well behaved without any fight or conflict while doing the analysis. Don't forget, I said, you know what, the moment you start doing the probability and the impact, there will always be debate. This person will say, no, it should be 2. That person will say it should be 1. You don't want to spend 1 hour debating on one risk. So that's why I say, you know, always do it with selected few. Because if you have to make it open to the entire people to say, you know what, let's do this, then you won't leave that place. You only do 2 risks, because there will always be dissecting opinions on a particular risk, and everybody will want to tell you that, you know what, that risk should not have that kind of probability or that kind of impact. So on my own project, I always avoid bringing everybody together to do the analysis of that risk. I always do, if the moment we categorize it, if it's a technical risk, all I do is I look for the technical folks, especially the subject matter expert within the technical risk, and put them in a room to say, okay, let's do analysis for this particular risk. If it's resource risk, I put the guys that are involved within that into a room. I try not to lump everyone together. That's what I've always done with my own risk workshops or risk analysis. Does that make any sense to you? For me?
yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other question, please? Okay. So guys, your homework for this week is to get at least 20 risk for Office 365 deployment that we're doing. At least we've written 10, so you just need to add 10 more to these. At least 20 risk on your risk register, fully analyzed, and with a full risk response documented as well. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
Can
Yeah,
you say
it is, but are we gonna have this document? Because the one we had initially was the one you started with. So are we gonna have this template to work with?
No, I want you to develop your own template.
Oh,
So you
great.
can do a screen grab of this now on your phone or your laptop of the risk we've identified.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not giving you this. Go look for your own template. Go and search online for templates. So I want to see different kinds of templates next week from everyone. Okay?
Are we?
We are not friends anymore, right?
No, we're still perfect. We're
All right,
still
Zakia, go ahead.
Are we presenting it or are we sending it to
I will give everybody 2 minutes to present their stuff next week. So you
okay.
don't have to send it. I'll give everybody 2 minutes to present their risk register because, like I said, as a project manager, this is quite critical. So I want to see everybody participating in this.
Risk.
Okay. Okay. So IJ mentioned issue. So the next to talk about is issue management. And when it comes to issue management, I don't have a log for issue here. So when it comes to issue management, any risk that has occurred, okay, any risk that has occurred, let's assume, like we said, hardware delivery delay. We're saying hardware delivery delay, and what plan towards is say, you know what do we need to do? We can say that means we will not procure that particular hardware from that particular vendor because that particular vendor has disappointed us in the past. So we've tried to respond to that particular risk by mitigating that risk. Okay, that's a good response, right? Now, the new vendor now supposed to deliver on Monday. That by Monday we don't have it. We don't have that. Now this has now become what? An issue. So we can promote this particular risk from being it is no more a risk now. It is now an issue. Okay, that is what is called the issue management. So now for issue management too, we need to make sure that we have a strategy on how we want to manage the issue. It's an issue. So how do we now manage it? We need to respond to it. What do we need to respond? Or is there an alternative? Is there an alternative way to do that? Do we need to call? Do we need to do stakeholders management and all that? IJ, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm trying to understand it. So issue is a risk that has happened.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. That's the simplest definition. A risk that has occurred. Don't forget, risk is anything that has got potential to happen. Okay, that's a risk that you've identified that, you know what, this is a risk, it might happen. The moment that risk materialized, it is now an issue. So you need to promote it to an issue and document it in your issue log. Does that make sense?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Then you have to do your also analysis on it. Say, okay, why has this issue occurred? Why has it occurred? How do we now solve it? That's just it. So you're not doing probability or the impact. You're not doing probability anymore. You're not doing the impact of this particular issue now on this project, and how do we respond to it? Who is the owner of that issue as well? Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Good.
It does.
Any question from anyone? I'll try and get a log next week on the issue. Any question from anybody? Before we end the class today, I've covered the 2 topics I really want to cover with an extra issue. Any question from anybody? Ask questions, please. Ask questions. I know the topic tonight was quite straightforward and also demonstratable, if there's a word like that. Anything from anyone? All right, Dale.
Yeah, I wish to ask a question. In a situation whereby these risks have been, mitigation plans have been made.
Yeah.
Do you mean that when this risk surfaces, the mitigation plans will be implemented? What of if they are being implemented and it doesn't work and it affects the project? What happens?
If it's been implemented and it doesn't work, then you have to question your risk analysis technique or your risk analysis understanding. Then if it doesn't work, what has happened then? What has happened to that risk? Meaning what? And it's an issue. Okay. But I will tell you that not all responses to risk will work.
Okay.
Okay. So the moment your response doesn't work, what you need to do is just, you know what, and that thing has occurred, then you promote to an issue and start looking for how to resolve that particular issue. What's the impact on the project now, and how do you resolve it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Talking about question.
Okay, I wanted to ask, are these the only categories that can be assigned to risks?
No. There are several other categories. There are project management category. There's technical. There's resource. There's operational. It's all dependent on the kind of project you're working on. Okay.
Okay. And the estimated monetary value, what does that help us to understand? I was thinking maybe at the end of the log, we'll just maybe calculate some things like if all this is, I don't know. What does that, what's called, how does that help us? Adding an
So
estimated
how this
monetary
help? How this will help you is, don't forget we said, for compatibility of laptop for Office 365, I was saying that, what, the expected monetary value is £5,000. So you want to say that, what, if this should happen, we need to have a contingency plan of £5,000. Okay, so you've got that contingency of £5,000 in order for you to tackle that. So that means if that issue should happen, you need £5,000 to resolve it. Does that make any sense? That's what we call the estimated money. And also, these will also make you to respond very well. You can imagine if we say compatibility of laptop not happening and we have £100,000 as the expected monetary value. The moment we have £100,000, you want to tell me, you know what, this is not a small risk. This is a very, very high risk. Okay. So this is actually also giving you a steer on how best to manage this particular risk based on the expected monetary value of that risk. What exactly will that risk cost us if it should happen? Does that make any sense?
Yes, contingency plan. Thank you.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So for your categories, you've got numerous categories. You've got communication risk or regulatory risk. You've got quality risk, human resource risk, you've got supply chain environmental risk, legal risk. You have project management risk. You've got financial risk, compliance risk, operational risk, technical risk, security risk. Okay. You've got loads of categories.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Deji.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, based on these, for instance, with these estimated monetary value,
yes,
coming into contingency planning, I'm coming to realize that, is it not important we have, just like you mentioned, the initial risk, what's it called now, workshop, and we have all of this done at the initial stage of the project, so that we could accommodate some of these monetary values in the project budget or plan?
You can. The moment you have all of this, you can put all of that together and work to your sponsor to say, you know what, based on all of this risk that we have, these are the expected monetary values. So we need a contingency plan or a contingency cost to tackle all of these risks should that happen. In most cases, they will tell you, yes, we've got that already. We've got our plan somewhere already. That's what they will tell you. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. Any other question from anyone tonight? All right. Thank you, everybody. It's nice having you around again. We will see next week by God's grace. Next week is a day to Good Friday. Yes, we should still meet. Okay? We will still meet.
Next week, Thursday is Good Thursday.
Sorry, final